Hello again, everybody, and welcome to the post-Leeds edition of the Tottenham Way Reaction podcast. And we're in a great mood because Spurs have won. They have won by 2 goals to 1. They have ended the international break curse, which had stretched on for a couple of years. Would you believe it? And of course, there are a lot more games to come this weekend. But for now, Thomas Frank's side are up to second in the Premier League. There's a lot to get through. I'm Marcus Buckland. George Sessions from the Press Association is with me today. And George, I don't know about you, but I thought this was a really important game. I mean, Spurs have made a decent start to the season. There has been a lot of criticism from certain quarters about the style of play, the team selection, etc., etc. We all knew coming into this one that Spurs keep stumbling and then inflicting a 2 week horror period for the supporters as a result of the international break. It hasn't happened. They had to be pretty gritty, I felt, for long periods today at a noisy Elland Road. So for you, first of all, just how big a win is that?
It's over. The international break is over. We can enjoy this next 2 weeks and not sit there thinking, why didn't you play this one or that one? It was funny. We was in the press conference with Thomas Frank on Friday, and we didn't ask him about the international break hoodoo before Bournemouth because that would have been unfair. It was obviously, six of them were underhand, but the seventh defeat, 7 defeats in a row, was under Thomas Frank, and he was in a good mood actually. He took it well. He said he told the players they better win because he's going to be asked about it in the press conference. So no, really, really big win, and I think I was critical in the week, and I've been a bit frustrated with recent performances. But I think now with this win taking things forward, it just keeps the momentum ticking along. I think that's 6 wins in 11, isn't it, for Thomas Frank? 3 of them away from home as well in the Premier League, which is never easy. So yeah, I think he deserves a lot of credit for this win, and it's a big win, like I say, just to keep the momentum and the kind of positivity going, especially into an international break, which we haven't had for a long, long time.
No, absolutely. It was really interesting looking as soon as, of course, you can. You check the starting 11, and I think most eyes would have gone to who's playing up front. Richarlison was left on the bench. Tel started again, and we know that naturally that's not his favoured position. It's always fascinating to see what Frank's going to do with not only his starting 11, but with the way he can change things around during the match. And of course, he went to a back three central defenders for the last 7 or 8 minutes. Tel scored, which is great. Deflected shot off poor old Struck, who had, he had a bit of a shocker, Struck, because both the Spurs goals were deflected in off him, and he had a chance to score at the other end as well. Is that going to create a real renewed sense of confidence inside Tel? And for those who wish to criticise him, was it just a little reminder that there's a young player here with a lot of ability? I mean, how do you assess his overall contribution today?
Yeah, we said it, didn't we, a couple of pods ago? He just really needed a goal, and I was so, so pleased for him. If I could have picked someone today to score for Tottenham, it would have been him. I wasn't sure he'd get on the pitch, to be honest. So I kind of expected Richarlison to start again, even though I don't think he's been that good lately. So full credit to Thomas Frank for making that decision. Leeds away, you wouldn't ordinarily say stick Matthias Tel in. He's gonna do the business there. But that goal does show just a little glimpse in 10, 15 seconds of why both me and you think there is something in there and that we should persevere with him. There is potential, and it's a brilliant just work the yard of space snapshot. Yeah, he gets a deflection, but if he doesn't get that shot off, then it doesn't go in, and that's something that I've always liked about him. That if I think of Richarlison, Dom Solanke, I don't think they score that goal, to be honest. They don't strike me as someone outside the box or sort of 18 yards out. They're going to get that snapshot off. Whereas Matthias Tel, I think he does have that kind of snap in his shot to do that. So I was really, really pleased for him. Really, really big moment for him. And some lovely words, from him afterwards, and also Mohammed Kudus post match was talking about how much that goal will sort of do for him and how pleased everyone in the squad was for him. So I'm really, really happy for him. And Thomas Frank spot on with his team selection, putting him in.
Hmm?
I wanted Archie Gray to play, but I completely understand if he's going to put Xavi Simmons in as a number 10, as we've all kind of been crying out for, then you do it with João Paulinho and Rodrigo Bentancur away from home. No sort of issue with that midfield. And I guess, I don't know, Mark, because what did you kind of make of the shape of the team? Because it was sort of 4-2-2-2, wasn't it, at times? And it was kind of Xavi Simmons was really high with Tel. and Kudos and Odobert were sort of the number 10s, and then it would be a 4-2-3-1. What did you sort of make
Mm.
of the team and the shape as well?
I like the flexibility. I mean, this is what I like about Thomas Frank. I do trust in him, and he can make these subtle little tweaks. And I don't know yet technically what that lineup was meant to consist of, but it morphed when it had to. They got so much space down the left in particular. I mean, one of my criticisms, especially when Leeds then went and equalised, was that we've had two or three great opportunities actually to go 2 or 3 nil up and put this game to bed. So the structure worked, and I'm really pleased. I kind of thought that Tel would get another opportunity because we spoke about Richarlison during the week, the fact that he only got 10 touches during the European game. And, and I still also, by the way, there were moments today when I felt, we have not got that natural goal scorer when the ball two or three times was drilled across the face of goal. And if Harry Kane's there, he's tucking it away. And this is definitely an area that Spurs they know that they've got to look into that. But bearing in mind what material they had to work with today, I thought it was excellent. And incredibly, almost, we had an Odobert assist and another Tel goal when he headed against the crossbar from the Odobert cross. And again, he like Tel is coming in for a little bit of veiled criticism from certain sections of the Tottenham support. I mean, again, did you see enough from him today? He played most of the game. Are you starting to see enough to make you feel that maybe he's going to be the answer, or is he really just a sticking plaster before Spurs go and look to spend a lot of money on a quality player on the left side going forward?
Yeah, he might be the sticky plaster, but I have to say he's starting to take his chances probably a bit too strong, but he's starting to show, similar to Tel, I guess, just flashes of his quality, and it's okay. That's why if Spurs have spent 30 million. He can do that, and that would have been a wonderful goal, wouldn't it? If it was Xavi Simmons' beautiful flick over, Odobert with a cross, and Tel actually leapt really well. To make the header, and I think, I'm not sure if it was a save or it just smashed off the crossbar, didn't it? But yeah, there was moments from Wilson Odobert. I think we still want it's still the end product with him. We're probably going to come on and talk about Kudos. Obviously grabbing the winner, and whilst Kudos hadn't scored until today, the assists and the kind of the productivity from him and that kind of general threat has always been there. We're just not seeing that enough from Wilson Odobert. And look, there's a few years between them. They're different stages of their career. Should point that out. But I do want to see just a little bit more end product from Wilson Odobert. But I think, building on from the Doncaster performance and how he played at Brighton, we're starting to see little glimpses there. When everyone is fit, which is a big when. Who knows when that would be? Could be next year the way things are going. But when everyone is fit, I wonder how many opportunities he will get. But he's getting them at the minute, and he didn't do bad today.
No, he didn't. And you're right. We'll come on to Kudos in a moment. I thought he was absolutely fantastic. We'll talk about not Tel, Xavi, who of course started in his favoured position at number 10. I'm going to mention Archie Gray as well because they kept cutting away during the coverage of all the Gray family. And I'm thinking, oh, well, there's Archie on the bench. Let him come on, please. All the build-up was about him, but Thomas Frank had to go with his head rather than his heart. But the equaliser before that, and inevitably, once Leeds made it 1-1, the manner of the goal led to plenty of criticism for Vicario, who, for whatever reason, is not everybody's cup of tea. And I kind of get why that is. Obviously, earlier in his career at Tottenham, he was struggling with those set pieces, and the opponents, opposition were very aware of that. I think that's become less of an obvious vulnerability. I still think his shot stopping in general is really good, though. Of course, he had the error against Brighton. Later on today, saved very well with his legs. I've got just a little bit of sympathy for him with the goal, George, because there is a slight deflection which changes the pace of the ball coming towards him. Having said all that, you want to see him do better, either save it or make the parry that much more effective. Instead, of course, it goes straight to the striker and it's one apiece. Um, where do you stand with Vicario? Because the other thing I would say, even if you're unhappy about his overall contribution and the fact that maybe he sometimes makes the defence a little bit jittery, the two things I'd say is, A, he's just been made part of the leadership committee or whatever you want to call it, which makes me feel he's unlikely to be dropped in the near future. And secondly, if you're going to drop someone, you've got to have a better alternative. And although Kinski came in and did very well when he first arrived at the club, I don't think he's as good a goalkeeper as Vicario. So to me, it's not really an issue at the moment. Where do you stand on that?
Yeah, I guess in a similar vein to sort of Matthias Tel scoring today and being one of the heroes, I was really pleased that second half Vicario had a couple of really big moments. I don't think he started the game brilliantly. Obviously he was at fault, wasn't he, for Joe Rodon crashing that header against the or that effort against the post. And with the goal, I agree with you. I think it's a little bit unlucky because it does get a deflection, doesn't it, of Mickey van der Ven, and then also he's made the save, but the ball's bounced off his arm a second time after making the save. It's a little bit unfortunate that, and obviously it's been tapped in, albeit nearly stopped by the beach ball. That would have been a funny, funny repeat of
It
Darren
would.
Bent and Pepe Reina from God many moons ago. But yeah, look, second half, we really should talk about that save from Dominic Calvert-Lewin. I think it's 48 minutes. If Leeds score 2-1, then maybe they go on and win 3-1. Maybe Spurs battle back to get a draw, but you probably struggle to see Spurs coming back and winning the game at that point. And I put it on X that's a brilliant save. It gets a deflection off Van der Ven completely. With the rain as well. Let's not forget it skids off the surface, and he sticks out a boot a little bit like David De Gea. He does remind me a bit of David De Gea, Vicario. The sort of the more I watch him, not great from crosses, but just a brilliant shot stopper, and that is a really big moment, and he deserves the plaudits for that. And then towards the end of the game, Joel Piero has that shot, not the hardest shot in the world, but again, it's wet, it's windy, it's bouncing, it's sort of a half volley. He makes the save. He does get a lot of criticism, Vicario. It does kind of frustrate me a little bit because I think people overlook that shot stopping aspect. People expect goalkeepers to be great shot stoppers, but they're really not anymore. They're brilliant with their feet, and lots of them are good at crosses. But actually, many of them let in easy shots. Quite often I see that so many times when I'm doing random Premier League games. And the other thing that I really like about Vicario, which I think people sometimes take the wrong way, is he's got an amazing mentality. Hugo Lloris, just as a kind of a slight comparison, brilliant, brilliant goalkeeper, but I didn't like that his mentality was always top four. We must focus on the top four. Let's not go for the next. Let's not try and win the league. Let's focus on top four. I can't remember how many times I heard Hugo Lloris say that in the mix zone. And whenever we speak to Vicario, he's not talking about we need to do better in the Premier League. We need to compete in four competitions. He wants to go for the trophy. He was one of the guys last season that would constantly say, we can do something special this season. We can win the Europa League. We can win a title. We want to end this kind of 17-year drought and end the curse. And I love that mentality about him. I think that's something that also gets missed by people. He will be one of the big drivers in the dressing room, around the training ground, saying, let's push, let's do this. And he also does the team talks before the game.
Mm.
So you can see how much of a leader he is. And it's no surprise to me that he was in the leadership group from Thomas Frank named on Friday.
Yeah, I mean, it's very easy with, a goalkeeper makes a mistake and he gets heavily criticised and, oh, it's the end of the world. But, if you have a look around the Premier League, he's not the best. Of course, he's not the best. But I think, we should cherish what we have before we start chucking them under the bus. And I agree with you. I like his obvious determination and leadership because we were saying last season in particular there was a real lack of leadership within the team. And I know occasionally it looks as though he's particularly criticizing maybe one of the younger members of the defense, and he'll let something that Romero or Van der Ven has done go unnoticed. But I think he's got a lot to offer, and yeah, he's going to make the odd mistake. But we've got bigger fish to fry, as far as I'm concerned, at the moment, than worrying too much about the goalkeeper. One person we haven't got to worry about, we've just got to applaud and cherish, certainly after today's performance, is Kudos. I mean, the guy, as you've said, that's his first goal, but he's been so creative. He's been involved in a number of assists. There was one moment today, George, was it at the start of the second half, I think, where he seemed literally to have the ball stuck to his feet, and he ran and he cut back and he turned inside two, three, four Leeds players. In the end, disappointed on that occasion, there wasn't an end product, but the guy is so skillful, majestic, aware of what is going on. I love the crossing. There's almost always an end product, and today we had the ultimate end product because he scored his first goal. I thought he was absolutely outstanding.
Yeah, I agree. He's always such a threat, isn't it? You kind of I think when you look at this Tottenham team, if there's anyone that you could say who's going to be a 7 out of 10, it's almost always Kudos, isn't it? And he really has hit the ground running. It's it looks an absolute steal at the minute. £55 million. He should have scored first half. We probably should point out that was quite a bad miss. That would have been a lovely goal if he'd steered that into the corner, like he did against Wolves actually for the disallowed goal. But yeah, it's felt like he's been edging closer to that kind of first goal. Um, and I guess that's something that I'm sure Thomas Frank will be pushing him to do more, but it's actually to cut inside and shoot. We often see him sort of going on the outside and crossing it in, or sometimes checking back and crossing to the back post. But he has got a very good shot. I remember watching his highlights, not so much at West Ham. I think it was more Ajax actually. He scored a lot of long range goals at Ajax. So hopefully that's kind of that will give him confidence, and it's a sign of more things to come from him. Because if he adds goals to his game as well as
Mm.
the assists he's getting, he's, as I say, it feels a steal at the minute, and if he can sort of get up to double figures with goals, then we'll all be sort of lauding him as one of the signings of the Premier League season, let alone just one of Tottenham's signings.
Yeah, no, he's definitely got the potential for that. You're right with the one opportunity where he somewhat ambitiously looked to steer it into the top left-hand corner. It's like, come on. Actually, on that, I mean, that was almost just too confident because he had time to bring the ball under control and to tuck it away, and that was the culmination of a really good break actually by Spurs. What about Xavi overall? He started in his preferred position, and there were periods of the game where he had plenty of room to operate in. I think my overriding memory, unfortunately, is going to be that attempted Rabona pass in the second half, which clearly was the wrong option at the wrong time. But I mean, there were definitely signs for me, definitely signs that he's got a lot of creative ability. He's obviously quick. I mean, the physicality of it all, I'm still not sure about, but I'm hoping that you share my cautious optimism that this was a good step in the right direction for him.
Yeah, I think the Rabona probably let's not talk about that. God, had he been watching Eric Lamella and thought let's try that? No, that didn't pay off. I guess what that kind of highlighted is that he didn't really trust his left foot there, did he? In that kind of scenario. But I think the two moments for me that I'm going to remember of this performance are those two wonderful passes that he did actually make. I mentioned one of them, didn't I? That kind of flick through to Odobert, and Matthias Tel hits the crossbar. And then there was another wonderful pass to Pedro Porro in the second half, and Porro sort of couldn't quite make the most of that opportunity. But I think we've seen today, you know, when he and especially when he gets up to speed, because I think he looks a little bit slow at the minute. And I think that's probably more to do with the fact he's just not adjusted to the Premier League intensity. It's so intense. The Bundesliga is pretty intense, but the Premier League is another level, isn't it? And I think the more he plays in the number 10, the more he kind of gets that connection going. And he's already got it with some players. Certainly feel him and Odobert do have that kind of little bit of magic between them. But the more he plays in that number 10, he's going to get better and better. And I think we saw today why probably Thomas Frank does need to keep playing him in the 10. And I was pleased that he did play him in the 10. It feels like he hasn't, maybe had the complete trust of Xavi Simmons to play there and do the dirty work and do the backtracking. But I thought he was good today. I kind of had a look before, 33 touches of the ball. I think as a number 10, I would want him to have more. But away to Leeds, Spurs weren't completely going to dictate the game, were they? I think he had a good performance, and that's an encouraging cameo. I think going into the next month, Aston Villa, Monaco, Everton, Newcastle, Chelsea, some tough games. I think we want Xavi Simmons to be the number 10 and to be trying to dominate those games. And it was a good step in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. When we come back from this international break, suddenly it gets that little bit tougher, to say the least. But so far, so good. And as I've mentioned, in terms of the league table, as we record, there's lots of games still to come. But Spurs are up to second, and it does make me wonder why already. And I know social media, George, is not the most accurate area to gauge everybody's opinion, but some of the criticism that Frank is coming in for at the moment, I find bewildering. I'll also accept that maybe some of us are also fixating on his predecessor and his troubles. And I won't talk to you too much about Postecoglou at Nottingham Forest because I know you have a very soft spot for him. But But obviously, if you look at his first 6 games, which represents 2 draws and 4 defeats, and you look at the fact that Vicario, half asleep here. Thomas Frank has got 6 wins in 11 and just the 1 defeat at Bournemouth. Well, I know what I would rather have. What did you make of his substitutions towards the end? Just having a look. Richarlison came on and Sarr came on initially for Tel and for Xavi. I mentioned that Danso then replaced Odobert as we went to 3 central defenders for the closing minutes, and Johnson late on for Kudos as well. And there was no Archie Gray, and I was thinking, oh well, maybe Archie could come on for Bentancur. Of course, has just signed this new contract, and we know that Frank really likes him. And for an away game at Leeds, I would agree with you. Bentancur had a big role to play, and he played it extremely well. But occasionally Frank comes in for criticism in terms of the timing of his substitutions and then what he's trying to do with them. Do you think he got everything right in that regard today?
You've reminded me, Marcus, mentioning Rodrigo Bentancur. That'll be one for the international break, but we're going to try and put Tom Allnutt's appraisal of Bentancur and Thomas Frank's appraisal of Bentancur side by side, because very, very similar minds, clearly. I wasn't mad on his subs to begin with. It was Pape Sarr and Richarlison, as you mentioned, coming on for Xavi and for Tel, and I thought that was a little bit negative, only in the sense that the midfield three of Sarr, Paulinho, and Bentancur, I didn't really feel like any of those guys were really going to keep hold of the ball. So I would have liked to have seen Lucas Bergvall, or probably Archie Gray, actually, given, maybe that's been a little bit too kind of, a bit of a romanticist, but him coming on against Leeds, I expected him to play some minutes because Thomas Frank had really talked him up on Friday, after a billion questions from myself on Archie Gray. But yeah, those two, certainly Sarr on for Xavi, I wasn't mad about. I did like that he brought on Kevin Danso and went to a three at the back. We haven't actually seen that so much from Thomas Frank, to be honest. We did see it from Ange in the Europa League final, and it paid off to good effect. And there was, I think that worked actually, because Kevin Danso come on. I think there was 2 instances where he was either jumping or he got there to make the header. And if he isn't there, then Romero has to come across, and then it maybe creates a sort of a space in the box. So I thought that was a good move actually, to go to the three at the back, and I guess just sort of moving on to Thomas Frank, those scenes at the end were great as well. All the players kind of sort of pumping chests of each other, and Thomas Frank taking them over to the away end. And there is a real kind of, you can already see that sort of togetherness and that unity. And I think those type of wins like today, they're going to just build that even more. Going away to Man City is obviously a brilliant win. But it's a different game, isn't it? Going away to West Ham winning 3-0 is a little bit different, because, again, you've not had to really dig deep and grind. And there was a great moment. I think Destiny Udogie, who I thought was brilliant today, actually. He is really, really getting back to his best. And I think Jed Spence's form has slightly dipped over the last few weeks. And Destiny's come in almost the same as last season, actually. And now he's fully fit. You could just see what an unbelievable athlete he is. But it was Destiny that made a header late on, to deny Pascal Struch, actually, and Mickey van der Ven gave him a big chest bump. And there is just that kind of camaraderie and that real togetherness. I think that was obviously built last season, with the Europa League, but it's being fostered perfectly by Thomas Frank. And yeah, I think Danso coming on, that will give everyone confidence, actually, that the next time he does that, which will probably be in a kind of a bigger game, you would imagine, maybe away to Monaco, maybe Chelsea in November, when Spurs are hopefully holding on to get wins. The team will see Danso come on and think, we did that at Leeds. He come on, he made the difference at Leeds. We're going to do it again. We're going to be strong enough to hold out this win. So I really did like that substitution.
Yeah, and to be fair, you're absolutely right. It worked very well towards the end of last season in that Europa League campaign, and Ange got it absolutely right. So, I mean, there's a part of me that, and I was saying to that, you bring on the extra central defender, you're hanging back a bit, you're looking to hold on. Fine if it works. Of course, if you do concede, then inevitably you're going to come in for some criticism. But I agree with you. I thought it was the right thing to do. And, I'll be interested come the end of the season to see how many teams go to Leeds and get 3 points, because this is not like last year where the 3 that came up obviously went straight back down and did not look equipped to compete at the highest level. I think Leeds looked a half decent team again today. We did have space. I mean, it was a game we should have won, and we did win. But I think they're going to cause a few problems to some big teams over the next few months. So yeah, I mean, Johnson comes on towards the end again, and I was thinking of you now, George. I was thinking, he could have started him up front. He obviously doesn't see him as a central striker. He could have brought him on as a direct replacement ahead of Richarlison. And when he came on for Kudus towards the end, that's when I was thinking, well, I don't know what he thinks really about Brennan Johnson at the moment. It's going to be really interesting to see how Johnson's future pans out at Tottenham over the next few months.
Yeah, I guess I'm not quite comfortable with Johnson starting as the outright number 10, say like Tel has done. But I guess Tel scoring today just bumps Johnson down in terms of that option playing through the middle just a little bit more, doesn't it? And with Odobert doing, better on the left than he has done of late, and Kudos is obviously now down on the right, Johnson has kind of been pushed out a little bit, hasn't he? I guess just going back to predictions, I did say 2-1, didn't I? I wasn't very
Yes,
confident.
you were not the least bit confident, but my God, you're on form. I'm listening very closely to everything you have to say for the rest of the season now.
Yeah, I manifested that one. I'm going to predict Andrew win a trophy. Might not be at Forest, but no, I think just sort of wrapping up. Let's sort of pay sort of tribute to Thomas Frank. He's come into a really big opportunity for him. The first time he's taking charge of a top six club. I don't personally like that, but Spurs are one of the biggest clubs in England. And it was a big job. He's replacing a guy that had just won a trophy, albeit had a really poor league campaign. And as you mentioned at the top, Marcus, 6 wins out of 11. 3 of them really tough away wins. He's sort of had the team very good defensively, man management wise. Putting in Tel today, putting in Tel for the West Ham game. There's certain kind of small decisions he's making which are really paying off. And yeah, I think after the 2 sort of draws with Wolves and Bodo, which I was frustrated with, it was a big win today just to keep the kind of, the Thomas the Frank engine, as people like to call him, the Thomas the Frank engine train on track. And Spurs seem in really good shape now, don't they? Especially when you consider actually that there is no Dominic Solanke, there is no Randall Kolo Muani, 2 guys that, if they're not starting, they're going to be first options off the bench. But hopefully, finally, God, we're going to see him after the international break now that Solanke's had surgery. But I think big credit to Thomas Frank. He didn't have the easiest of starts, I think. Man City in there, West Ham away as a London derby, albeit they're not playing very well. And Leeds, this was Leeds' first defeat in the league since August last year. So shows you how difficult Ellen Road has been, even if it has been mainly in the Championship. So I think Thomas Frank will go home tonight and sip that glass of red wine and enjoy the next 24 hours. He has a 24-hour rule when it comes to results, win or loss. And I think he'll enjoy the next 24 hours toasting the 6th win of his short Tottenham career so far.
Yeah, no, he deserves to. And just a final point, we can all go and have a glass of red wine and toast the result and enjoy looking at the league table. For me, I mean, you mentioned Solanke and Kolo Muani. I mean, he's had the most deadly dead leg in the history of dead legs. But the one thing for me on the road, I mean, we're good. There's no question about it. You look at the results that we've already compiled, and we have got a really good setup to engineer big wins away from home. The key is going to be to find the right system at home, starting against Aston Villa. I mean, I don't know when Solanke is going to be back and when Kolo Muani is going to be back, but for me, that's the one issue we've got here is to find a way to be a little more creative while still having that defensive assuredness, which was clearly his very first task, and to make this Tottenham team just that much harder to play against because we were too easy, weren't we? At times last season, we were just opened up. So there's all sorts of areas, but I just wonder how quickly he's going to be able to find that subtle adaptation to his system to make us a bit more effective and a bit more creative at home.
You're leading me into topics that I want to discuss during the international break, Marcus. You're sort of eating into our podcast that's going to be next
Okay.
week. No, I agree with you. I think that's clearly the next. As I mentioned, some brilliant away results already. But the next thing we want to see is the home games. And actually, and I'll get getting more into this, over the next fortnight. I think maybe the home fixtures coming up might actually help him in a way. Aston Villa at home, Chelsea at home, Man United, they're all kind of games. Spurs aren't going to dominate and have 65, 70% possession, are they really? They're going to be real battles and real encounters. And maybe that'll actually help Thomas Frank in a sense. He doesn't have to face Wolves at home or Bournemouth at home, albeit Bournemouth are doing brilliantly, and Andoni Iraola's an incredible manager, but I'll save praise for him for another day. But no, I think clearly that is the next step to get Tottenham's home form back on track, because actually I think, and this is obviously included in mainly Ange games, I think it's 3 wins in 17 Premier League games now at home, which is really, really poor. But yeah, let's finish on a positive note with one before the international break.
Yes.
We can now enjoy the next fortnight, and hopefully all the Romero and Van der Ven, they're all wrapped in cotton wool for Argentina and the Netherlands, and we come back in a couple of weeks' time, all positive thinking. Can we win the league? Why not?
Well, listen, my 24-hour rule begins now. I can see my bottle of red wine. So, George, thank you very much indeed. That is George Sessions from the Press Association. I'm Marcus Buckland. As George hinted at, we will be back along with the two Toms, Messrs. Allnut and Barkley from the Times and the Sun, during the international break to reflect on what has happened, what is going to come. And yeah, we've got one or two nice little ideas as well in terms of subject matter. And we'll go through all your questions and everything else that you've been sending to us. It's all part of the interactive experience. George, I'm really bad at this. Can you very quickly remind everybody how they can get in touch with us? It's normally the duty of one of the Toms, but you're good at this sort of thing.
Yep, you're racking my brains. Hopefully this is right. The Tottenham Way pod at gmail.com is the email. And we're across all the social medias at the Tottenham Way on X, on Instagram. We're not on TikTok yet. If you think we should get on TikTok, let us know, because a few people have said our kind of YouTube shorts have a space on TikTok. So maybe we will if there's enough push for it. So yeah, hopefully, send us some questions and we'll try and tackle them during the next fortnight.
Great stuff. George, thank you very much. Thanks to all of you for listening. Enjoy the fact that for now at least, Tottenham Hotspur are second in the Premier League. As always, come on you Spurs.